Roadkill Extra appears every single weekday at Motor Trend On Demand. It's a show that gives you question and answer sessions, deeper looks into our project vehicles, behind the scenes stuff, and here's a sample right now of one of the shows that you missed last week on MotorTrendOnDemand.com. You can watch them all with a 30-day free trial. Dulcich and I are here pulling our 318 small block Mopar out of our 70 Dodge Challenger off-road car because we destroyed it with the sand. This thing is completely ruined with sand. So you'll see us in an upcoming episode of Roadkill Garage fixing all that. But I thought I would take it as an opportunity on this Roadkill Extra to give you just a little bit of background on what the small block Mopar is. This was an engine that came out in 1964. It was called the LA engine, which is light A engine, because there was an earlier platform that was called just an A engine. What's confusing though is that there's a lot of Mopar guys who will now call this an A engine, just really casually. Right. Oh yeah, it's an A motor. Well, it's actually an LA engine, whereas the earlier ones were A engines. And there's not a lot of interchange between the earlier small blocks, which would have been 63 and earlier, and these, which came out in 1964 and ran all the way through at least the late 90s as a Magnum version, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, in roughly 1992, 93, they came out with what's called a Magnum engine, especially in Dodge pickups and Durangos and things like that. The difference being, it's the same basic architecture, but the cylinder heads are a little bit different, and they oil through the push rods, meaning that the oil comes from the camshaft up the push rods to lubricate the rocker arms, whereas this engine has a rocker arm shaft and passages in the cylinder head where the oil comes up and fills the shaft to oil the rockers.
Which one do you like better?
Oh, I like the original engine better.
Oh, me too.
Yeah. But
hands down.
There is some advantages. Like I think the Edelbrock Magnum head is better than the Edelbrock LA head, isn't it?
It is marginally, yeah.
Yeah,
but
just a little bit.
Yeah.
What's the other difference on the Magnum engines? They went to hydraulic roller cams.
Right, but they also did hydraulic rollers in the LA engines that were
Earlier.
pre-Magnum. So
Yep.
the big difference on that was just the Magnum head with the pedestal mounted rocker arms and
Yep.
and the oiling through the push rods instead of the shafts. Like
And the LA engine came in 4 displacements. In 1964, it was launched at a 273, and then came the 318, which later was known as a 5.2 liter, and then the 340 and the 360, and the 360 was known as a 5.9 liter. And the 273 and the 318 share the same stroke, which is
331, and so does the 340.
And the 340, that's right. And the bore of those engines is all different. I forget what it is on 273, but a 318 is...
A 3910, and then the 340 is 4-inch 40 thousandths, and the 360 is 4 inches exactly.
And the 360 also has a longer stroke of 3.58 inches. And so...
And bigger main bearings.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Well, the 340 that is in 73 has bigger main bearings too.
No.
No?
No.
I thought there was a changeover where there was 2 different 340s.
Yeah, they went to the cast crank, but they still had the small journal. Like
Oh, they did.
318, yeah.
And that's something that hangs up a lot of people building these engines, is you do have to know what your main journal diameter, because it affects the oil pan, right?
Yeah, the thing you have, the oil pan on the 360. The 360 is kind of like the odd man out. It's the only one that had the bigger stroke. It's the only one with the bigger mains, and it had a different oil pan because the crescent on each end is a different diameter.
Because the bearing diameter is different. So that's something to know. What else is like a bugaboo for people when they go on rebuilding these things?
Well, here's a good one for you.
Huh.
The early 273s had a different angle on the intake manifold bolts than the 68 and later engines, where they revised it. And I don't know why they did that, because there was really like mechanically
change, yeah.
no difference other than that.
Well, the very early 273 also was available with a solid lifter camshaft, and they came with factory adjustable rocker arms, which I remember using on 340s back in the day when you put a solid flat topper cam in them.
That's a good one, because I've got a whole bunch of sets of those old
See?
273 rockers saved up when there really wasn't a cheap alternative for an adjustable rocker. So.
Yeah, back then when we were in like high school and stuff, that was the trick.
Yeah.
Find a 273 in the yard with an adjustable rocker arm. You could put a solid cam in your 340.
Here's a lot of things. Here's the thing that a lot of guys don't know is the 273. Most guys think finished like in 67 or 68 at the latest,
Yeah.
but they actually had it in 69 as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I thought that's when the 318 came in.
My white Dart, the Don't Hit the Dart,
Yeah.
it was a 273 car.
Oh, okay.
And they
the-
had both 318 and 273 in 69.
The highest performance model was the 340, which came out in 1968. And then there's a variation of the 340, which came in TA Challengers and AAR Cudas in 1970. And those have a different valve train arrangement where they move the push rod out of the ports, kind of like what you do on an aftermarket port job head, right?
Yeah, it had an offset rocker arm arrangement, and it wasn't quite as much offset as the later race heads.
Yeah,
but
no, not at all.
Yeah.
The later race heads like a W2, W5, they're completely different and use a different intake manifold and exhaust bowl
But the
pattern.
distinguishing characteristic of those motors was 3 Holley 2 barrels on an aluminum intake manifold. So basically,
346 pack
Yeah.
in the TA and the AAR.
boy, I always wanted to have something like that, but it was always out of my league. Did
Oh,
you
I
ever
know.
own one?
Well, no, a friend had an AAR Cuda when I was in high school, and I remember riding around in that, and he crashed that thing really bad, but that was when that car was worth like $3,500,
Yeah.
something like that. As a matter of fact, here's a trivia point for you. When I was 15 years old, the very first car I went to look at for sale was a 1970 TA Challenger.
Oh, really?
And the guy had just painted it. It didn't have the stripes or anything. And to me, that was a big bummer because back then you couldn't buy a reproduction tape stripe kit for a TA Challenger or for anything really. We're talking, 1982 or something, 83.
Right.
And it was a 4-speed car, and I remember he had a 4-barrel on it, and the 6-pack was in the trunk.
Yeah.
Didn't you see that a bunch when you found a 6-pack car for sale? The 6-pack was gone because people just got tired of fiddling with the 3 carburetors.
I looked at several of those things back in the day when they were really like cheap, undesirable muscle cars that
Yeah.
nobody wanted. But even back then, they were, like you said, the $3,500 car for a nice one. And, I was more like your $800 to $1,200 guy,
I guess it's true.
So it was out of my league.
So are you more of a small block guy or a big block guy when it comes to Mopars?
You know what? I mean, I'll tell you, I was 100%, big block guy through and through.
Yeah, me too.
I wouldn't drive anything that didn't have a big block, and if it came with the small block,
throw it away.
Yeah, it would
Yeah.
get a big block.
Gone.
But you know what? Now I'm probably more of a small block guy, and there's one good reason for it.
Stroker kits?
That's part of it, but even if you don't stroke them, I mean, you can make
RPM?
so much power with the small block that's almost unusable on the street. So,
And
I
they're
mean,
lighter.
Yeah, and they're lighter, which I like. So
Here's a strange philosophical problem.
really,
So
what?
I think the small block is ideal for an A body, which is like a Dart, Duster, Valiant, something like that.
Oh, I know where
And
you're going.
they're acceptable in an E body, which is a Barracuda or a Challenger. They're absolutely unacceptable in a B body, right?
My 71 Satellite's a small block car. I've got a hot 340 in there, but you know what?
Did I just touch a nerve? Is that
No,
like a sensitive subject
yeah,
for you?
I know. I feel so wrong and inadequate having that small block in my B body.
I know.
No matter how much power it makes, it's just not right, is it?
Yep, it's not.
Yeah. So I kind of retain that sentiment as far as big blocks in a B body is the right combination.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you know what?
What?
Still better than a late model Hemi in one of these.
Yeah. For sure.
So anyway, there's a little bit of history and a little bit of philosophy and just a little bit of tech on the engine known as the LA, the small block Mopar, which is of course available in Chrysler, Dodge, and Plymouth cars and Dodge trucks. And I suppose Plymouth trucks too, because they made Plymouth trucks in the 70s. But that's another story for another time on Roadkill Extra. If you need more Roadkill Extra, go sign up for the 30-day free trial right now.